I don't think we're going to be too long for this recording.
Yeah, because we didn't like it.
Whoa!
Oh, the one there's a couple things.
There's some good parts in this movie, but there's overall.
Well, then when you point out the lily cup thing, I was like, that was good.
Yeah.
The fish. What are you talking
It's
about?
a flower that turned into a fish, or a fish that turned into a flower. I don't know.
Flower to fish. Yeah. And then it was swimming all around until she died.
That's so sad.
Very sad.
Yeah.
And very cool. It was like her own little Weasley clock.
And then was there something else that was good?
It turns off. I think there were a lot of things that were good. Probably some things that were bad too. But
I'm good at sticking to the Velcro of the negative stuff.
But I love the production value for one.
Yeah.
It just felt like, again, I've said this every movie. It feels so much better than the last. And this one, I mean, they were all in with the budget, and it showed.
Yeah, that's true.
It was crisp.
Yeah.
Like the way it was shot and the effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the visual aspect of this definitely I feel like there were creative choices that the director has made that they like had whatever they could do whatever they wanted to do. Like you even noticed the black and white in the cave scene. And it's one of my favorites because it goes all black and white, and then you have the fire and it's like bright, it's crazy, and it's like such a well shot scene. But a lot of the other ones, they're like, again, it's one of the more divisive movies. Actually, not really divisive. It's pretty unanimously the most hated of the movies.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, people just...
Yeah, Sam good.
Yeah,
nice.
you have a very good vibe on the Harry Potter community. Because it just deviates so much from the book. Which...
yeah, all right, that's fair.
Honestly, which is a funny thing to me because you guys didn't necessarily like it and you've been really far removed from the book. So it's like, I'm going to remind you guys of some stuff in the books that you're going to be like, oh yeah, they completely forgot about that, or they completely forgot about this. But the movies...
But I forgot about it too.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I know, but it's just like there are certain staple things you just don't change.
Yes.
100%.
What are those staples to you?
I don't like that Snape, it wasn't a mystery.
Yes.
That I did not like at all.
So this is actually a great point. If we watched this movie before we started the 7th book, do you guys think that would have been spoiled for you?
Yeah.
Really? It was like too obvious?
It was obvious now.
Yeah.
I think it would have given us a pretty big clue.
Well, because he's like, shh, to Harry underneath the room. And that feels like you're on that side. Because otherwise,
we would have been debating.
He would have exposed Harry. Like, can you imagine if Snape was actually on the Death Eater's side? He would have said, Harry's down here, and like bring him up.
Oh, yeah.
He's not going to say,
I forgot. Because even afterwards, he still knows.
The platform.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot.
So that would have given it away. So yeah, good call.
Even as we were talking it out, like, yeah, you're right. We would have talked all of that through, and there was no reason. His only thought was, but Harry still chases him out, and he still stops Harry. And
I'm just saying it felt like protective or something.
It did feel that way. And I don't,
even if by no, like, since we had finished the books and then watched it, I still think I would have picked up on that. If we didn't finish the books and I watched that, I would have been like, wait, Snape is doing what?
And I think that's what's weird in the books. It's peak fury at Snape. And in the movies, you're just left with mystery. Like, wait, what was that about? Could he still be good? Ooh, interesting. But in the books, those were not the emotions. And I'm glad we didn't watch the 6th movie. It didn't feel like it was the same energy.
Yeah.
And Dumbledore was just so, like, cold.
Yeah.
And I brought it up to my coworker that likes Harry Potter. He's like, yeah, but he's supposed to be.
No,
because he's supposed to be. He said that the reason he liked him more than I guess I was saying I liked him was that it's visually portraying that he had to be closed off from Harry for the Voldemort connection of the Horcrux, seeing it, like, being able to see through Harry. So I was like, I guess there's a point there.
No,
but
that
I really don't like him.
that point. Sorry, I'm having mic issues.
But wasn't that also?
That
point. Was that the same
Was what the same?
book, or was it the week before? The book before.
Which book? Like which one?
Yeah, so that's I think, which is a weird point. Michael Gambon's best acted movie is the fifth one.
I don't know who that is.
Dumbledore.
Yeah, Dumbledore.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I don't
yeah.
know actors'
I think his
names.
best acted movie is the fifth one because in the fifth book he's cold. In the sixth book he's not cold at all. He's like very apologetic and like strikes up a relationship and a friendship with Harry.
Yeah,
in like a way that you never
Oh, that's
see.
right, because then he brings him to the cave.
Yep.
He's gonna be open with
He
you.
showed
blah, blah,
like
blah.
he's not open
And
with
you
everything,
feel
but
that
you
difference.
you feel the warmth in the sixth book especially.
Yep.
In the fifth one, he is acting as cold and he nails it because he's
'Cause
cold
he
in the
is
books because he
Yeah.
doesn't want to really like talk to Harry.
You're
So I'm
right.
like, he's acting like he is normally around these movies, but he just nails it.
I
Because,
feel like they like told him the wrong role. Like they told him to be.
He
book
only read the
5,
fifth book. Yeah.
and that's what he went with.
No, that's fair. And that's why in the books it feels distant and you're from Harry's perspective, you're like lost. You're like, why is Dumbledore being like this? But in the movies, it doesn't feel like that because he has the same feeling in 4, 5, and 6.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, there's
Um,
no change, so like you wouldn't notice anything. That's just how he is.
Yeah, I don't know. Something about it. It's kind of blending together where you're just missing that warmth through and through.
yeah.
I mean, I still think overall it was entertaining and.
Yeah, I don't want to hate on
Yeah,
him like
absolutely,
too
yeah.
much, of course, but it's
But then it's
a
weird
different
because I'm like, oh, I
interpretation.
wonder what it would have been like to watch all of them, and then like do the
Yeah,
reverse.
yeah, for sure.
But that's what
Yep.
Lauren and Brandon might do. They'll do the reverse.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get to ask him,
And then we'll get to see.
see what the deal is.
His mind will be blown.
So yeah, we'll talk about this movie in like pieces, I think, because there's good parts of it, there's bad parts of it. I made a video on how this is actually my favorite movie. I think it's
Your
It's
favorite
your
movie?
favorite movie?
out of all of them. And I say that kind of
That's-
like tongue in cheek because everyone hates it so
Yeah,
much.
right,
I'm just
right.
contrarian, so I just say
Yeah,
it's my
that makes
favorite.
that.
But what were
that
your points?
sticks.
My points were, it's it has like the tone of the movie is really really interesting. So, actually, let me start and then I'll go into my real points about why I like it. So, welcome to the podcast. I'm John
Jen.
Danny.
and Chris is like
I should have a cadence of more finality
yeah.
with and Danny.
And this is Harry Potter.
May
the
we
first time
redo
reader.
it?
We're old hats at this already.
Okay.
Okay, so my reasons for liking this movie are split into segments of what I think good scenes are and bad scenes are. I think out of all of them, this is probably the worst adaptation. But as far as like how a movie is made and like the entertainment value of a movie, I think it's the best one. There's other ones that like the next two are good as far as like a movie's concerned, but the next one is a really good adaptation. The one after that is kind of in the same vein as Half-Blood Prince. But the first and second are just adaptations. They're kind of boring, the movies, I find. They're like quaint and I watch them at holidays and it's nice. But this one feels more like a movie. Like you sit down and like you miss certain things because of the sins of the previous movies, but it just feels more like a movie, like rather than an adaptation, I guess. So I like that. I love certain scenes of this movie, like the Harry drunk scene. I think is one of the best scenes in the entire thing.
Oh, that is
On
good.
Felix Felicis. I think that's one of the best, most memorable scenes in the entire franchise. I love that scene so much. The moment when he's like, Slughorn is talking about Lily turning the flower, the Francis the fish. I think that's one of the best little additions to the movies. But one of my favorite parts is these movies, the books too. Like you get a movement between Harry just wanting to be a kid and just wanting to like, date. He's like has a crush on Ginny and he just has this thing for Ginny. And then he goes to Dumbledore's office and it's dead serious. And it's like, okay, we got to figure this out. And the books have a really good play between that. And I think the movies actually have a exceptional play between that.
You're right. Yeah.
Like there's so many like small little jokes in there with Ron and his dating life and Hermione. You're so wrapped up in the dating world of them. Like someone actually remade this entire movie or a trailer, put a trailer out on YouTube, and they're like, they remade it so it's a rom-com, and it just like makes sense. It's like hilarious.
Huh.
And it just feels like a rom-com, but at the same point, there's so many dark moments in here.
Yeah.
And I love that the director switches between those so almost effortlessly. So I love that part of it. So there's like a few things that I just really love. But for this movie, I break it up into scenes and like chunks. And there are some that are terrible, that are absolutely awful. And there are some that are spectacular. Like even the Katie Bell scene where she gets hexed by the necklace. I think that was a great scene. Like there was like some weirdness to it. Like Hermione's coming out and she's pretty much like half drunk, like putting her arms around Ron and Harry, and you know she's acting all goofy.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Katie Bell gets like put into the air, and it's kind of like
that was creepy.
Yeah, it's kind of a creepy, scary scene.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that. But I don't know. Most people hate this movie so much.
It's just also crazy that as each movie like director picked and cut out different things, it's like the next one can't like add that, like continue.
You get a little trapped. Yeah.
Exactly.
You're like, and I was like, oh man, that does stink, because like, what if they wanted to revisit that? Like that character doesn't even exist.
Yep. Which is one of the big.
I wonder who they would have. Like I'm just wondering of certain things. Like if. Did we miss big scenes because they clipped them out in earlier movies? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I guess
Are we missing characters?
we almost certainly have, but I can't think of any right now.
I mean, so like there's a few that we just completely miss out, like Bagman, but he's not like that important. But the Neville and Dobby stories, like their character arcs, are completely different. So there's a point and like I've heard a few people say this when they're movie only watchers, and the point where Neville like cuts the snake, which happens in the movies, they're like, why is that such a big deal? But for us who are like book readers, we're like, that's important for his character arc. That's like he's becoming a true Gryffindor. It's like significant. It's like such a cool moment because you really see his character arc, because they skip out the whole his whole like parent kind of situation. They briefly touch on it, but that's just like not there. And then Dobby's background and his story, it's just different. Creature, they missed his entire thing, which is the most devastating part. I know, yeah.
I just realized Creature doesn't exist.
No, in the movies, he does, but
Because he was
rarely.
Oh, he didn't come up in book 6? I'm confusing
he does,
them.
but he really does.
he was a minor character in 6, but
Wait,
he was
6
around
also,
in
I'm sorry.
5. 6 also what?
Oh.
Bug.
I thought it was a bug. Okay. I just forgot everything.
You were saying something about 6 with
saying
creatures. 6 was the one where...
Was that the safe house, or is that book 7?
No, Safe House is book 7.
The Black House.
That's book 5, which they go to. That's headquarters for the order.
But then he's...
Mhm.
Okay,
That's
I'm
book 7. But Creature is a little bit in this one. I'm fine that they cut him out of this one.
I thought it was like, I was thinking it was the other storyline of him. So I'm like, that's huge.
To be honest, okay, so like it's kind of necessary in this. They can they could do it by some other means. But in book 6, Dumbledore comes to the Dursleys' house, and remember, this is when he gives like him the lecture, or them the lecture. He's like,
Oh my
"You've
goodness.
never been a good you've never been good parental figures to him." Like, and he throws shade at Dudley too. He's like, luckily Harry escaped the harm that you inflicted on this boy, and you're like, Dudley's
And he's like, huh?
What? And it's like a great scene.
I forgot
and you love
that was
it so
the
much.
beginning.
But
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
when
yeah.
this is when Dumbledore summons Creature.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, let's see if Creature, or if number 12 Grimmauld places in your possession, Harry. And that's where we find out it is.
Mm-hmm.
So when they go to the safe house in movie 7, you're like, did they really own it? There's like, some creepiness to it, but it's like Harry, so he owns it. And
Yeah.
it's like his place. Which, like, that's a minor thing. You can kind of skip that. But again, movie 6, like, the biggest gripe that people have is it just skips the memories of Voldemort. You don't really know what this kid's about, or like why he wants.
I know
what he
they
wants.
only picked like 3.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
so many.
you're right. Okay.
And the
yeah.
history of like his family, like his
Yep.
parents. Why didn't they didn't put the mom at all with the
Not
love
a single
potion
one.
thing?
Yeah, you're
I
right.
agree.
That's really weird too.
Well, I think I understand in a way why
Thanks,
they would
Robin.
do that.
Why?
to keep just the pacing of it, because it's hard to do memories. So they're like, look, as a kid, okay, real quick, and then they move on. And then it ties in nicely with Slughorn, and then they skip everything else that was the previous generation. But it just stinks because we loved it in the movies or in the books. But I don't know. Maybe I'm also wondering, when different people read, different people might focus on different things. So for me, I was focusing on specific things, and I love those memories because that's wizard lore. I'm like, what are we going to figure out? Where can we make these connections?
Yeah,
And maybe
but
other
that's,
people
like,
are
the
like,
same,
skip
though.
it. Same thing with Quidditch. Some people might be like
Oh.
loving Quidditch. Other people are like, forget it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not sure. But
They could have done it though, like quick.
They
You know,
definitely
like, you
could
could've
have.
just had like a span of memories and then just flashing.
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's what I do like about missing scenes rather than changing them, because I can dream there's a deleted scene and they just had to cut it for time or for something else. Well, there must be deleted scenes, right? Do these movies have deleted scenes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I feel like that'd be fun to watch and see what else even just was on the cutting room floor. I'm just thinking of Lord of the Rings and the extended edition.
Yeah.
Those are different because they're like 45 minutes of extra content. But
I don't know what that is.
yeah, I don't know. The memories. At least we still hate Voldemort. you
Yeah,
know?
for sure.
But
We
we don't
still-
understand as
Yeah,
much.
we don't really understand him. We like still hate him. I think in the movies when you see Voldemort, you just see him as like off, like odd.
Hmm.
Like even I kind of like the child actors that play him because they kind of portray that somewhat well.
Oh, with the sorry.
Yeah,
to
you're good.
interrupt you. The hurting people and stuff.
Yeah.
Though.
Yep.
Mhm.
And the possession. I guess. Yeah, kind of.
But it's not like there in its entirety what it should be in the
Yeah.
books, because in the books that happens and then
Is the cave mentioned before the cave? Like
kind of
where
Did they
he
mention
would,
a field trip?
like there
Yeah.
was something where he hurt kids
yeah,
and
it's where
like
you have to hurt the kids. Yeah, that's how
Yeah.
Dumbledore knew. So
Right.
like it's that stuff that's important. Again, if you're making an adaptation, I understand why you're trying to cut it. It's not like essential. You can kind of arrive at that in your mind, just like skipping over those things. But I think some of the essential parts that they miss are like him more as an adult and like working in Borgin and Burke's, like trying to get a job.
Yes.
Like
Yep.
that kind of stuff, like him meeting with Hepzibah Smith and like the lust in his eyes, like him, even him slowly
oh, the
changing his
beginning
appearance.
or the
Right.
Horcruxes, right? Wasn't he
Yeah.
collecting them?
Yep.
And then seeing the beginning of that and
That
the
was all
changing
in
in
book
appearance.
6, right?
Yeah, and then even when he came
Yeah, it was. 'Cause
to
they were the memories.
Hogwarts to try and get the job, that was all book 6 too.
Yeah.
And so we don't see any progression,
Yeah.
just child.
I just wish they just made it longer then or something. Like, why
I know.
couldn't they?
Yeah.
Is it a budget thing?
And I also feel like there were bonding moments between Harry and Dumbledore while they're kind of figuring this stuff out together.
Not this
Even though you
Dumbledore.
get fair. Even though you get the feeling Dumbledore in the books at least is trying to teach Harry like how to do this kind of hunting. And kind of guiding him. It's a little less mystery, but then here it just feels so fast. It was just the cave.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of other stuff. Well, I should say Slughorn was the first adventure, then the cave. But yeah,
The cave was
just happens
pretty
fast.
cool.
Yeah.
There was
Fantastic
certain
scene.
things that I was like, oh, I wish he like said something more because Dumbledore actually
Mhm.
says light, but then Harry can't remember it.
Hmm.
Like,
And
that's
this
a great
one,
part.
It's like weird. That
And then there's a part that everyone wants in these movies, which you don't get in the beginning, but when Harry is on his way to the cave, he talks to Ron and Hermione, and they're like, I don't know, they're talking if they're nervous or something like that, and Harry's like, oh, don't worry, like I'll be with Dumbledore. And then as they're leaving the cave, Harry goes like, oh, don't worry, Dumbledore, and he goes, oh, I'm not Harry, I'm with you. Like even the change in those lines, movie lovers or book lovers would have loved to have those in the movies. Like, because it's small lines in the cave
Yep.
that you see like how much Dumbledore actually loved and cared for
but
Harry.
he picked
Yep.
the one line
we
that
don't
your
really get.
blood is more important.
Exactly.
So there was that. at
Yeah, there's
least.
that.
But then he had to leave also by giving blood.
Yep.
They didn't show that.
I know that it's shot. I will say the cave scene is like one of the better scenes for me. Like how I pictured that in my head, it is pretty similar to how it looked in the movies. I
Yeah.
think.
Oof,
There's
rough
like-
to watch.
I know for sure.
Intense.
Yeah, like there was intensity. I kind of would have liked to see like the progression of intensity more. It was like he drank that and all of a sudden it was intense and he just had to keep drinking it. I like the idea that it's like slow torture.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I don't like slow torture
Yeah,
people.
that sounds great.
But when he was drinking it, it was like slowly putting him into madness until like the last few. Then Harry was like terrified of this.
Yep.
But even some of the lines that he said when he was being tortured by this drink were like kind of good. He's like, kill me.
Yeah.
You don't get the exact lines that you get in the book, which you're like, just keep the exact lines in the book because he's talking about like really there's like hidden stories with Kendra and with Ariana and with like his brother Aberforth and his dad that you get in the book that you're kind of piecing together.
Like, why would you keep it the same?
I know.
Yeah, fair.
Also, I pictured the beginning of the cave scene different, where he had to find like the magic. He's like, you can find magic anywhere. And I thought, I don't know. I thought of it differently.
How'd you
Like-
think of it?
Doesn't he pull something out? He's
Yeah.
pulling a boat out, but it doesn't seem like it's magical. I don't know. It didn't seem as magical as Dumbledore being like this awesome wizard that can navigate dark magic and ancient
Like
magic.
once
Yeah.
they're in the like by
Once
the
they're in
lake
the cave, like I thought he said that he was feeling like the air and like grabbed something in the air, but that it didn't exist to Harry, but
yeah.
Dumbledore saw it.
And it almost felt like that
So-
to me. Well, then it's funny because then he just gives Harry like the chain or the rope, and then Harry's
for
like,
sure.
"Bleh."
I know, but that's why
Dumbledore
I
is
just
magic
felt like
and Harry's
it
still in
didn't
Muggle ways.
I don't know. I just felt like a little bit. I loved the scene, but I didn't feel like as magical or like shine a light on Dumbledore's gifting of the wisdom he has and being able to navigate all of these Horcruxes and figuring them out and then make it look easy. I guess he made it look easy getting the chain. I don't know.
Because
It just was like a little
I'm
weird.
with you. Because there's certain parts in the books where you realize that Dumbledore is significantly better than everyone else. Like no one can touch him. And I think the one part of the movies that does it well is movie 5 when he's in a duel with Voldemort, and you're like, these two can do stuff that other people can't
Oh,
do. And
yeah.
you're like, that's really cool. In the books, it was even cooler. But this is one of those scenes where like Dumbledore seems like he's like a little bit more far advanced. Like he like says, oh, like magic always leaves traces. He's like holding his hand out over the water and the chain pops in. But I'm with you, Jen. I wish they did it more because I think this is a point. I think this is actually a really important point going forward with it, where Harry is almost feels like overshadowed by how good Dumbledore was at this stuff, and he's like furious with how much Dumbledore knew and didn't tell Harry. And I think this fuels Harry into like his not like insanity, but into his deep frustration, because at the cave, Dumbledore is doing things that Harry has never seen before. He's
Yeah.
like reaching in the air, like grabbing magic that Harry can't even like fathom, and Harry is like in awe of him. And then at the end of this, when Dumbledore dies, he's like, why didn't I ask Dumbledore about all this stuff? And there's like more personal stuff that he has to go through with this. But I would have liked more like Dumbledore is far in advance a better wizard than anybody that we've ever seen. We got that to some extent, but not to the extent that I wanted it.
And also, it shows the contrast between like Harry having to finish this job where he doesn't even
know what he's doing.
know anything.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I think that would have been neat to just show a little bit more of that.
Yeah, fully agree on that. So I did like the cave scene. What did you guys think of like kind of the whole? I mean, sometimes it's even hard to remember some of the stuff that happened in the beginning because the end is just very like crystal clear. What did you guys think of the whole beginning part of the movie? So this is when they're like recruiting they're recruiting Slughorn.
I thought I
Oh,
liked
that was
Slughorn
good.
in this.
Yeah,
I don't know how you felt, but in the books, Slughorn was a character for sure, but
Yeah.
he didn't feel as important. But in the movies, it was like he had much more of a presence, a
Yeah.
lot more screen time than he had mind time for me, because I was still so concerned about Harry in the books and Harry and Dumbledore, and it was a lot more like the mystery, these other things. But I really liked that Slughorn story. I liked the way the movies portrayed it.
Yeah.
It was very engaging, and like you said, didn't feel like an adaptation.
Yeah.
It felt like the story was driving it. And I thought he did a good job being zany
yeah,
and not like evil, but you still don't trust him fully.
Yeah, for sure. Because he's a little more sleazy in the books.
Yeah, agreed.
In the
he felt
movies, he's a little bit more charming, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And just maybe he was just older. I pictured him just being a little different, but I didn't mind the way he was portrayed. I thought it was good. I like that guy, whatever his name is.
Yeah. I know his name, but I can't remember.
I keep thinking of him because he's the one in Hot Fuzz who says the greater good.
Oh, no way, really?
Yeah. So I've been thinking of him for a while.
That's actually great.
The greater good.
I feel like they had to pick someone that his character had to have more of a presence, though, because they didn't have any other storylines
Right,
going with any other
right.
characters.
And so it feels like they chose that direction, and they chose a little bit of the romance stuff.
But they didn't also do anything with I didn't feel like the prized possession of like he likes his ego of knowing or training all these different students. I feel like didn't really come across either.
Oh, you don't think so?
There was one or two.
It was
lines where
mentioned
they had
in the maybe because it's I guess it was mentioned enough.
Well, because he had
it
his
didn't feel the
his
same.
pictures up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, we were looking for it, but then even when they left at the beginning, Dumbledore said something to Harry, which I think he also said in the book. He's going to try and collect you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it shows like
okay.
that's why Harry was there. And it shows that he's like a little shallow. And then the way he would cut people off in like the dinner and kind of say, all right, well, you're not worthy. Or like he would never remember Ron's name. It didn't quite make sense to me how in one scene he was like running almost scared from Harry because Harry was on to him. But then the next scene, Harry's there with Ron and he's like, yep, all right, come in. I was like, it felt a little weird.
That was a good scene too.
But yeah, I thought a lot of those scenes were
the Ron poisoning scene.
Yeah.
That's really good.
That was good.
See, I kind of I disagree a little bit. I kind of liked. I think he's the shining point of this whole movie. Like I think this movie would be pretty rough without having him as being such a good actor. And I actually like the part where he like forgives Harry so quickly because I feel like that's very within the character of Slughorn. And even in the movie or even in the books, it kind of happens like that, where he's like kind of avoiding Harry, but then he's almost like, all right, Harry's going to be the most famous wizard of all time. Like, I have to befriend him. I have to get over this. And like you see that in the movies where he's like avoiding him and all of a sudden he comes back and Slughorn's like, oh, I'll water under the bridge. And he's like, I have to like, finagle my way into this guy a little bit, So I think he was just, to me, he was not a perfect adaptation of a Slughorn. Actually, I'll say a perfect adaptation of a Slughorn. He's a little bit different from the book, but I think his changes make him a more compelling character. Almost in the same way that Snape is a little different from book Snape to movie Snape. Like in the movies, Snape is a bit more like of a sympathetic character. The same thing I think is true with Slughorn in the movies. He's a bit more sympathetic of a character.
Yeah. Oh man, you're right with Snape.
Yeah, because in the books he's just a bully.
He's better in the movies in some ways.
Honestly,
like I like him a little more. I'm like, oh, Alan Rickman's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's not fair to watch scenes like that already knowing, and then I'm like, all right, it changes it. But him like telling Harry to be quiet and going and doing all that, I feel like, well, it's not fair. Now I'm watching it with that in mind, but I'm like, it comes off very different. It's much more like gentle and soft, and the look in his eye, you just kind of know how hard it is for him. So it also makes me wonder when they're doing the movies, like who they were for. Scenes like that almost make it seem like it was for people who already love the books and then want to relive the books through the movies.
Yeah, for sure.
But then there are other scenes where it feels like they don't even care about book people. So it goes back and forth.
I know. This movie feels like it's hot and cold with that. There are scenes where it seems like they really care about the book, and scenes where they're like, we're going to throw out the entire thing and just go around directing in it. Yeah. So the whole beginning of it, I think you mentioned this when we were watching the movie, Jen, of even the initial changes in Dumbledore when you first see him are like drastic, where we don't get the Dursleys scene, which I was bummed out about. Like, out of any movie to have the Dursleys in it, you want them in this movie because this is where
Yeah.
they get it. This is where,
And
like,
isn't this the scene where they've got Brandy and it's
yeah,
like
and
whacking him in the
hitting
side of the head?
Yep, it's great.
Oh, you're right.
It's so great. It's like such a
about
fun
that.
scene in the books where they finally get told how terrible of people they are to their face. You're like, you want that. And this is the one movie that they're not in. And Harry is like riding the train stations. You know, like you understand kind of why he's doing some
like,
of
you're
this.
being a rebel or
Yeah.
something like that.
He was about to go
Mhm.
on a date with that girl. He's like, Harry's doing some like strange things that could take his mind off of things. And he's like, yeah, you've been reckless, Harry.
Teenager.
And then he has this one line, and I think you even said it during the movie, Jen, where Dumbledore goes, oh, like, take my arm, Harry. And Harry's head is in it. And then Dumbledore just says, do as I say. And I think you were like, that's not what Dumbledore would do at all. It's like not a Dumbledore character. Like he commands Harry in the very end when he's like earned his trust a little bit more, where he's like, if you have to do the things that I need done, Harry, when we go to the cave, this is
Yeah,
like absolutely
it's
essential. But in
different.
the beginning, it's just different when he's doing on this like little side quest mission to get Slughorn. You're like, I don't think that's how Dumbledore would really talk to Harry like that. He like invites him on this journey. And especially now, because in the beginning part of this book, Dumbledore is trying to gain Harry's trust.
Mhm.
He's trying to like make it up to Harry in any way that he can. And you kind of see it in the books. In the movies, he's just still cold and he's like almost doesn't care that Sirius has died. And like, you know, he says, you've been reckless this summer, Harry. You're like, dude, that's not like he can be reckless. He's
ridiculous.
the-
Yeah,
he's the
yeah.
only person that really
Death.
like wanted him, you know, is dead. So it's a rough
They even
part.
talk about. They didn't even talk about that he got the house.
Yeah.
That Sirius left the house to you.
Yeah,
and
they didn't
Creature
mention it at
and
all.
stuff.
It didn't get mentioned at all, so they still could mention it in 7
I know. I'm just
before they
I'm
go. But yeah,
saying
you're
it's
right.
weird.
But because it changes the
And
tone.
also-
Because then again, Harry's like concluding the grief, and in the books when we're reading it back to back,
I
we're
just feel
like,
like if
we're still feeling that with him.
yeah, it didn't seem like it was the grief from Sirius's death though.
Yeah, it really didn't.
The beginning of the movie it just seemed like he was just being reckless or
Yeah.
something.
Just like an
Yeah.
angsty teen just being reckless.
Yeah.
And because we just finished the 7th book, I still have that like Voldemort is out to get you mentality.
Yeah.
And it feels funny that Harry's just like, I'm at a cafe, you know? I'm like,
Like riding the train
just
station
by himself and
away
like
from
I was like,
the
what is he
protection
doing?
of the house. Again, this is such an important part because
Yep.
Harry is away from the protection of the house. So Voldemort
Literally could have gotten him there.
could have gotten his Metro card and then hopped onto the train and just ended Harry right then and there. It just goes against the actual, like, this is something that,
The magic.
yeah, exactly. Like, this is my favorite Harry Potter podcast. They bring this point up all the time where the movies just go against what the actual magic should do. Like, they disrespect the magic. And that's like my biggest qualm with them too, is that like the
It just-
Fidelius charm is so important. And it's like, okay, this is a different version of the Fidelius charm, but like the protection that Harry has on this house is vital. And him just being reckless and like going around like that is not cool. It's not
And then it
something
means
should
that even if it was a different director doing the 7th movie, they can't make a big deal about that,
Yeah.
or then it discredits the
Yeah,
6th movie. So they're
exactly.
kind of, it's like improv, you know, yes,
I also
end,
wonder,
and you're
like,
stuck
did
with
they
it.
have to read the series before they were directors? Because I would have if I was JK. I'd be
Yeah.
like, you have to
They're
read it.
required to.
Yeah, well, but everyone just gets different things out of it. I'm trying to give them credit, but
Yeah.
it's
Or
Yeah,
even like Ginny comes out of nowhere and all of a sudden they have a crush. I'm like, she didn't exist in the first few
agreed.
movies.
I just gotta say it. I don't like Ginny.
Ginny in the movies? Yeah, it's rough.
She's not like
I don't want to hate on like the actress or whatever. Like she's cool, she's Ginny, but she's not a hot tamale. You know what I
They
mean?
didn't give her an opportunity either.
Yeah,
Agreed.
But whatever opportunity she did have, there was like one scene I remember being like, "Oh, all right, nice. This is the Ginny that I kind of pictured."
Yeah.
But most of the time, I feel like she's just like standing there, arms at her
Yeah,
side,
I
with
know.
just like
That's why I was like, how do you have a crush
blank
on
face.
him?
Yeah, it just like she didn't have that energy and that vibrance
confidence.
that
She
she
doesn't have the
always had
confidence,
in the
yeah.
books
Yeah,
as I
she
was
the
interpreting
hot
it.
tamale.
You guys are probably bringing up the biggest qualm that people have with this. Did he
That
bite
was
your
my
toe?
fault. Yeah, he thinks it was a toy.
While you're sticking it in the toy.
Yeah, I literally.
He actually loves doing that. He does that with me all the time. So
It just
get
scared
ready.
me.
He's gonna go ham on your toes. Okay, so movie Ginny is the worst. and everyone
yikes.
universally hates her because
Universally hates her.
yeah, there's not like
Oof.
a single person that I know in the Harry Potter community who thinks Bonnie Wright did a great job as Ginny. Now
Ugh.
they'll chalk it up to a few different things. They don't like so. This movie, I think Bonnie Wright could have done Ginny really well if she was given better lines. Because like one of her lines is like they're at the burrow, and she's in like her bathrobe, and she just looks at Harry, who's walking up the stairs, and goes, "Shoelace," and then ties his shoe. You're like, what is she supposed to do with a direction like that? You're like, what is going on? Right before the burrow bursts on fire, she's tying Harry's
Oh,
shoelace.
that's right. That also didn't
It's so
exist.
terrible. But like the one scene that I loved of her where she's at in Quidditch and Harry's trying to get everyone's attention and she just goes, "Shut it." And I'm like, that's kind of like Ginny. That's like the fiery personality of Ginny. So I kind of like that. So Bonnie Wright did great in that. But
That's why I feel like they just didn't give her an opportunity. 'Cause
Agreed.
maybe she could have.
I think she could have done it. At the same point, I think she was very unconfident in the first movie, which she nailed Ginny in like the second movie, where she's like this nervous kid around Harry and terrified.
Yeah, that
And I think they were maybe hoping she grew into like more confidence, but as a child actor, you kind of got to hope. And
Right.
I don't think she necessarily grew into that enough.
But they weren't doing her any favors
agreed.
with the
Agreed.
lines.
She
It
could have done
felt
better.
like they were just like, okay, you're Harry's crush now, instead of
Yeah.
being like, no, you're actually like this confident girl that everyone like is looking at, and all the guys like you because you're, like listing all the qualities of Ginny.
I think as good as the movie was and the production quality and everything, I'm thinking of when you pointed out the Patel sisters, where they, in that one scene of an earlier movie, they give each other that look where you just, there's a lot happening in this scene, even beyond what you're picking up in a first time watch. But in this movie, it felt more like cinematic and theatrical.
Agreed.
In that there was less of that, where a lot of times it felt like Ginny in particular was just kind of standing there, and I found myself literally noticing it because it was bothering me. And I'm like, this is where it didn't feel good. They weren't giving her like little things like saying, "Hey, do this," or in this scene, you're in the background, you wouldn't even think, but do this sassy thing or this fun thing, or be playing around with the people around you, be the life of the party, even if you're in the corner. So I think it just took away a certain energy. Maybe to give focus to Harry, but still.
There's certain things that you can do in the background to like, even like something like as small as a wink at Harry or something like that, something basic like that just shows confidence. Like Ginny is so self-confident and she like brings that out in other people too. So I'm like, she could have been, and she's such a mainstay in this book too. Whereas in the movies, you just don't get it. She's just like, some.
I know.
Yeah. The lines. So you chalk it up to both things, the lines and the acting and, the direction that she was given.
They tried to give her lines.
Yeah. Everyone says that the girl that Harry was trying to go on a date with in the beginning of the movie should have been the one that Harry ended up with, because everyone's like, she was, 10 out of 10.
Oh my goodness, you're totally right.
and then Dumbledore doesn't let Harry go back on that date.
What a great example. She had more hot tamale energy than the OG hot tamale.
She is the hot tamale in this movie, yeah.
Wow, you're right. That's unfortunate.
I know. I know. So that's why I like Ginny is rough in this one, but she's good in Quidditch, and I really like the general look of Quidditch in this movie too. Like I think they do a really good job of portraying Quidditch. Like even the shoulder pads that they have, the uniforms that they have, like how Quidditch, like the camera motions that they had for the Quidditch games. Ron like saving all the stuff, like the tryouts between Cormac and Ron.
That was good.
Lots of Quidditch in this movie, so I love that. A lot of other people don't love it, but
it didn't feel like too much to me.
No.
Did it to you? Because you don't like Quidditch.
I don't really like it.
But it still didn't feel overwhelming.
I thought it was pretty good. Enough.
It was just enough. It was like, they're not showing a full game, but it was like,
Yep.
And then Hermione helping him out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The nerves. Yeah. I liked when he like tricked Ron too.
Yeah, it was great.
With
it was a great scene.
Lucky
Felix Felicis, Liquid Luck.
Yeah, Liquid Luck. That's it.
Yeah, you're right.
Because it was great too, because Ron acted really well in that scene. Like again, Rupert Grint is my favorite of the whole trio for their acting, and I think he does so good in that scene when he's like, cheering on the crowd and like getting everyone into it with Weasley as our king, and so that stuff is so good. So I really love Quidditch. I was thrilled they got rid of the Grop chapter because I really hate the Grop chapter, but it is, or no, the Grop chapter isn't in this one. Sorry, a complete error on my part. This is what did they nix from this? I had it in my mind before, but I forgot. During the Quidditch games.
I'm trying to think of where this would have started. What was it?
It was oh no, I'm thinking of all the Quidditch moments in book 5. I was gonna say when Fred and George or Fred and Harry were banned from Quidditch, but that's not this movie either. That's the previous one. So I'm thinking of all the previous Quidditch movies.
But it is the beginning of this where in book 6 we didn't know where Hagrid was, right? Wasn't he doing all of that stuff with the giants and Eminem?
Oh yeah.
And because wasn't it the end of book?
That was 5.
Oh, so that was the beginning of 5.
Yeah.
So
he was gone.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so when did he get Grop? That's what I'm trying to place when you said that.
The middle of 5. That the whole Grop chapter was 5, and then this is the one where Ron finally has a good game in Quidditch, which is book 5, and Harry and Hermione aren't even there.
Oh,
They're like
yes,
going to
you're
get
right.
Grop, and they come back
Yeah.
and they find out that like Ron's done great. And it's lovely.
Yeah.
But when Harry fools Ron into thinking like he's a great Quidditch player, that's fantastic. It would have been nice to see like them, win the Quidditch Cup or something like that. But that's okay. They can kind of skip that for the movie's sake. But yeah. What else? What else did you guys like in this movie versus not like?
I thought when the whole mystery of the Half-Blood Prince was, I felt like there was a great energy.
Yeah.
And when he was using Septum Sempra. That I felt like was the right balance. Could have been a little more bloody. That's how I pictured it. But it would have almost been too much if it was. I felt like it was the right balance of actually, from Harry's perspective, being like scared. And that scene, I felt like it had the right tension of feeling bad for Malfoy, but also not liking him, but then ending with feeling bad for him again. And just like so many weird emotions. I was like, ooh, yikes. I don't know. I feel like a lot of those little things were pretty good.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you on that. I think they did some small things really well and some small things, not so well. But the one scene so this is one of the ones that I like. There in this specific scene when he curses Draco, there's great things in this scene and there's things I hate.
Ooh, nice.
Great things are like the curse itself. When he like splays it, and then Draco's his acting in this whole scene is good when he's like in the water. The only issue, which is like small issues, Snape just kind of comes wandering in, which I kind of like. That kind of makes sense to me a little bit, rather than like Harry is running throughout the hallways and then Snape just kind of like comes in. And then there's one part where they changed it from the books significantly, where Snape says, "Go get all your school books," because Snape like knows at that point. In the movies, he kind of gets it because he kind of looks at Harry like, "How did you know this spell? Like, what's going on here?" I liked how Snape like he had to do this like sing-songy thing to get like the blood and to heal him. That was kind of in the movies, which I thought was good.
Yeah.
But then the worst is when they have to just go hide the book.
I know, that was so bad.
It was terrible. That whole scene I hate after this.
Ginny brings him.
So Ginny brings him.
Oh yeah.
They don't hide
that
it
wasn't
next to the diadem, which is how they found out there was a Horcrux there. So they don't hide it there. And then, there's all sorts of like hidden innuendos in there where Ginny's like, "I can hide up here too if you'd like." And then I do like the part, the next scene where Ron comes and he's like, "Well, did you do it then?"
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, there's good comedic elements for this, but the whole thing just doesn't hold together. That whole scene doesn't hold together.
Yeah.
So
I think maybe just as a movie, but I liked Draco doing those things with the vanishing cabinet.
Yeah, for sure.
I felt like it set the scene much more, and it still didn't give anything away. It was still mysterious and wondering like, what is going on? What is this being used for?
Agreed.
Compared to the books where we understood, but it all happened so fast. But I understand why they had to do it differently in the books versus movies. But for a movie that's so quick and fast paced, you don't have time to really think it through. You don't even understand all the implications. It just kind of clicks slowly as the apple has a bite, and you're like, "What's that mean?" And then the bird, and so I feel like that was a good way to draw people in. And each time I was like more and more tense.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty good.
I'm actually with you. I think that was great, and I think Tom Felton's acting in this movie is maybe his best. But I wish they gave him more, because in the books, he's devolving so much that he's taking consolation in Moaning Myrtle, which you don't get in the movies, which is fine. But all his acting is really good still. He looks miserable. He looks like he's like going crazier and crazier every scene that he's in. He's like
Even the
angry
end.
at Snape. He's like going nuts. And I think he played that really well in this movie. So I kind of love that.
The end was interesting too.
Yeah.
With Dumbledore. Like he's like, I have no choice. Like when Dumbledore's like, you
Fantastic
can
acting
change, and he's like, yeah, it's either me or you or something.
Yep.
I didn't like how Harry was freed and not held back. But there was a weird thing that I didn't mind that Draco disarmed Dumbledore like that. But I go back and forth, because earlier this week I was mad about it. But in this moment right now, I'm like, I didn't mind it, because it almost felt like I'm telling myself Dumbledore is like laying down his weapon.
Yeah.
It was much more intentional, where in the book I read it more like he was busy protecting Harry, and so he didn't have time to defend himself. But this felt more like a willing. His arm was at his side. He saw Draco and was like, kind of letting it happen.
Yeah.
It still felt strange. Like, I don't know why he would do that. But from the perspective of book 6, I feel like it was still okay. Where I was like, okay,
Well,
maybe.
that's because that's the like way they were going with the story. It was like showing the cards of like Dumbledore is sacrificing himself. Snape is on Dumbledore's side. Like all these things, I feel like that's why they were leaning into the.
So yeah,
felt like
I kind of get what you're saying. There's the one thing that I maybe have a qualm with a little bit. I mean, I have lots of qualms for this scene, but is if that's the case, then Dumbledore essentially is like rethinking his plan and being like, oh, okay, now I can like. He's offering then Draco up as bait, which he doesn't in the books. That's why I like that Draco kind of bests him, not because he can best him, but because Dumbledore is literally protecting Harry. So protection is his first instinct.
Yep.
And then Draco's able to sneak a curse in there. And in Dumbledore's dying moment, maybe he's going, crap, I like am leading Draco to the slaughter here. Rather than Dumbledore having his wand in his hand and then Draco just disarming him easily like that, you're like, maybe Dumbledore wanted him to do that, and he's like, oh, maybe like another layer to the Elder Wand thing that he needs.
Mm-hmm.
So Dumbledore seems a little more maniacal when he's doing that. So I don't love that much. But that whole scene is just a little disturbing to me, because I think it changes so many of the characters so wrongly. Like the Harry, where they change his character, where he's not
like
petrified under the
my view of Dumbledore, like movie Dumbledore, is a different person to me.
Agreed, yeah.
Like I can't connect them. A lot of other characters I can connect, but Dumbledore, he just feels so different. It is very hard to connect. And I'm getting annoyed at that thing again, because Dumbledore in my mind was so weak. By the time we get back, he's like on the floor, like barely standing, right? And so in the movie, he just looks so composed, and he's in there just like walking around. I'm like, this is not how it should be. Because then again, I'm like, how is Draco able to do this? How is this a good plan?
Yeah.
So
and the dialogue in the books is so perfect, because there's certain scenes where Draco is like, you're at my like mercy now, and then Dumbledore's like, oh no, it's my mercy that matters now. Like there's lines in the books that you're like, you're like, why did they skip those? But I will say again, to the credit of Tom Felton, he carries this whole scene because of his like emotion in the scene, because of how he like portrays his grief and like his conflicted minds. Like I think he does so well in the scene, which is why I hate the scene, but I don't hate it as much as I could.
Fair. Yeah,
Because
you're
I
right.
think Tom Felton does so well in
That's
the
Yeah.
acting because I think he just does phenomenally in how anguished he is about this whole thing. So I really love that. I thought that was great. But then we even mentioned we had confusion when we were watching, but the Bellatrix wasn't there in the books. And she was there in the movies, which is a little bit more cynical or maniacal, I think.
How did she leave in the movie? How did the Death Eaters leave? Once they killed, they just went.
They
left.
ran out. Yeah,
Yeah.
like,
They
but
got
that
beyond
was
the
also
protection of the school.
weird too, because in the books it was a lot more like battle. It felt
Mhm.
like Harry's
And
like jumping
Snape-
over people and
Yeah,
stuff.
and then Snape was like fighting, but
But this
he-
happened very quick. It felt
Yeah.
like it was like they just cut to like outside. I don't remember if they even had anything running through the castle. But that again is weird. In my own mind, Bellatrix would have done things differently, or like, I don't know. It felt weird that she was there for whatever reason, changes the energy. And
Yeah.
like, I felt like Snape was the one who controlled the room, and everyone else, like in the book, everyone else was like cowering, like scared of Dumbledore still, and Snape like took control. But in this, it didn't quite have that same energy for some reason.
Yeah.
So
I
don't know.
I think that's a great point too. I think maybe they did it in the movie because Snape and Bellatrix are so different. So maybe they're just trying to show the difference between the two. Where like Bellatrix is literally like having a dance party on the tables, like kicking over cups and like ecstatic, and Snape's like, this is not like, this is serious. But I don't know. I don't necessarily love that change that much. So I'm kind of with you. But the Snape reveal, I think it just kind of fell flat for me because they missed all the dialogue. Again, like the last, when they came back from the cave, like the movie just, they deviated so much from like the perfect dialogue of the book that it just kind of crushed me. Especially the Snape reveal where he's like, I'm the Half-Blood Prince, because he has a line where he's like, don't call me coward. And you're like, what the heck is going on? In the books, you're like, oh, why is he like, why is he saying this? Why is he saying not, don't call me coward? So you're thinking about that more. And then like the whole reveal in the books is just so perfect. And in the movies, it's just, not quite there. But I don't think they did it terribly, but it's just okay for me.
yeah, they made like clear choices.
Yeah.
And some of them just weren't the right ones.
I know, agreed. Last few. What do you guys think of Dumbledore, his death, and like the Dark Mark, and everyone holding up their wands, all that kind of?
Oh, he didn't have like a funeral.
Yeah.
Holding up the wands, I thought was pretty good. It still felt a little strange. I don't think we've seen that before.
Yeah.
I would have liked if it was like calling back to something, even from even if it was from the same movie.
It's,
it
again,
feels a
not
little
respecting the
better.
magic,
Yeah, where I'm like, if you're gonna do something like that, at least have a line in a previous movie where they say, "Oh, that's how you respect whatever," or like in some other form we see it. So it just felt good, but
it's like a
slightly
feel good
strange.
scene. You know why they're adding it, because they want to make you cry. But like it's just
good emotion. You
Yeah.
know, the music kicks in. You're like,
Yeah.
it gets you. But I think I'm curious what it would be like to just watch the movies and have that all happen, having no idea like from the books, because it was like sad and it was powerful, but in the books I feel like it went on longer, maybe because it was fresh to me, but then the funeral and like I don't know, and Hagrid and like the whole thing, it felt like there was just a lot more to that morning that was maybe missed. It was somber though, and then even the end, there's just the glimmer of hope with the was the sun setting?
yeah, sun was setting. Fox is kind of going
That's
around
good
crying,
symbolism. But yeah, it's I don't know. It was somber, but not as sad as the books.
Yeah.
Not as
For me,
like
they need it sadder.
Yeah,
They
like
need
it
more somber.
It felt like they were still trying to have like it end with a little like not sadness, and I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to end, and it is sadness, and wait for book 7
Yeah,
or
agreed.
movie 7.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of just missed it. I like the cave. I think the two scenes really right before the cave, I think, are my two favorites. Where Slughorn gives off the memory. I think that scene is perfect, like legitimately perfect. And then the cave, which I think is 95% I'm happy with. There's like a few small things that I'm like, they could have changed this, made it better in the books, give better lines. But 95% of that I'm happy with. After that, I'm like, it's so up and down, mostly down. I'm like, there's so many changes that they made that I just don't like, especially after Dumbledore dies. I think your point was great because you kind of sit in the grief a little bit. You almost have time to process through that. Not like massively, but like, he goes to the funeral. Harry like has this meeting with Ginny, like, they can't date because of some noble reasons. She says all that. And then you have more time in the books. In the movies, it's just like it ends, and then they're on like top of this tower, and they're just like having a conversation, and it's like nothing like how the books really should be, or how the books kind of portrayed it. So I wasn't the biggest fan of that.
Yeah. Well, but again, it could just be longer. If you want to end with hope, that's
Agreed,
fine, but still give some grieving time in there, and then do a
Agreed.
little like.
Just stick with like a Lord of the Rings format. Just make each movie like 3.5 hours and then 4.5 hours
Why
for the
didn't
extended
they do
editions.
that?
I know they really should have.
But that's why the
HBO.
show is possible.
Yeah, I know. Agreed.
Because I think anyone who read the books can look at these movies and realize how much was skipped. So it opened the door to the show.
Agreed.
Which is going to be pretty sweet.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped for it. So we'll see if it's good or not. But,
Well, I watched one of your videos, John, that you made about who should play Voldemort.
Yeah.
Some curveballs in there.
Yeah.
But you know what? When I started watching it, the first person that came to mind was one of the Skarsgård brothers, the guy who did It. I forget which one he is.
Yep, one of them.
So then when you mentioned him, I was like, yep, it's great.
Any of the
But
Skarsgårds.
you had some good ones in there.
Yeah. Who did we ultimately pick as
Well, one of the ones you said was that is the only one I like really remember is Rafe Fiennes' brother.
Yeah, brother. I think that's the guy we picked.
Was he like the final thing? Yeah. And I was like, whoa, that's cool.
like it'd work,
That'd be really cool.
My
Googling the names.
But all like the things you were saying, I was like, oh, I could totally see it. There were like a lot of good ones in there.
We did the Dumbledore. The Dumbledore one was the most fun because I'm so convinced that I forgot his name, but he's the Game of Thrones Jorah Mormont.
Jorah Mormont.
I think he needs to play Dumbledore. I'm so convinced of that. Like, I want to like write to the writers of the HBO series and be like, please cast this man as Dumbledore, because I think he would be so perfect as him. Any last points about the movie before we kind of just hit on some of our favorite and least favorite parts of it? We'll just talk about Hot Tamale and who won this movie and Best Actor.
Oh no, I feel like we touched upon
Yeah.
most of it, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of ups and downs in this one, but
Yeah.
I think we touched on a lot of
overall it was good. Like the scenes you were saying, I liked
Yeah.
too. That Lily scene was good though.
it. Yeah,
too.
agreed. Because it just that scene just adds
Well,
like
they don't-
extra backstory to Lily that I love. Like, not only was she a good student, she was like exceedingly kind to like a professor. Like, when am I ever in my life going to give like a professor a gift like that? And like Lily is so thoughtful that she's doing that. I'm like, so much extra story to that. So good. So
Well, they
Right.
had to bring in something about the family because they don't talk about it
Yeah.
much.
yeah.
But
So
I
guess-
love it so much more when they don't tell you, they show you.
Yeah, I
you know what I
agree with
mean?
that.
It's just like telling the story. Like
Yeah.
that shows the things about her character. So I was like, oh, it's great.
Yeah. Because
Yeah,
that
it was good.
Yeah, that was my point in someone was making fun of me for this because that was my point in this scene. It was like, if you're gonna, you need to show, you can't tell. And then someone's like, oh, but literally Slughorn is telling a story here. But I'm like,
Yeah, I'm like,
he's still
even as I
showing
said it out loud, I was
Yeah.
like, nah, it said tell again.
That's
But it's
literally what I
it
was
shows
thinking.
Yeah.
Lily's character.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
It shows Lily's character. And I think that's so vital that you get that. It's just
Honestly, I
such
thought it
good
was in the
writing.
book.
I know. Yeah.
That's how it like
Yeah.
smooth.
Yep.
I don't know.
So true.
So who's your guys' hot tamale in this movie? We'll go with that.
Oof. That waitress. Like it's. Was there anyone? You know what? Lav was.
I was thinking it, but then I was like Hermione kind of at the
I
end
know,
when she
yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
oh, you know, like kind of showing that.
Wait, what was like a moment where it felt like she was really giving the energy? Like to Ron at the end
in the hospital, which was really kind of like
Yeah,
love.
that's
Oh,
what I was
yeah,
thinking, the
that was good.
hospital.
That was
and then
good.
she
You're right.
was kind of like, oh, hi, here I am, Ron. And,
Yeah.
and she's like,
She goes, oh,
Lav
shut up.
runs away.
Yeah. And then I
Yeah.
do of all the Dumbledore lines I hate this. I actually kind of like this one when Lav runs away and then Dumbledore looks at everyone and goes, "Oh, to be young and to feel love's keen sting." Like, read the room first of all.
It's
but-
just so weird. I was
kinda
like,
love that line.
goodness gracious. You know what? It's funny
Did he
because
actually say that in the book?
No.
No, right? Okay.
But
I can't.
I was just laughing. Well, that whole scene, I just thought to myself, some little child actress who, you know, is maybe done nothing before. I don't know anything about her. Is now like doing these really funny scenes in
Yeah.
front of all these powerhouse actors.
Yeah, for real.
I'm just watching. It felt so funny. Then Dumbledore gives that line.
She does great too.
Yeah, I actually
Jess-
thought she was
Jessie
good because it
Kate,
was
I
so
think.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
But yeah.
it's good.
And
Yeah.
the necklace he had to wear. I thought they did a good job with Ron's and Hermione's storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did a good job jumping back and forth between the serious and the playful.
Yeah.
And
I'll give my hot tamale to Ron for that reason because I think he was great in this movie.
Yep.
That's fair.
He was kind of fought after, really playing with people's emotions. Kind of an idiot, but still, you know,
so true.
kind of has a hot tamale energy going.
Yeah,
on.
you're right.
Or you could say the burrow for them burning down the burrow. That's a really
Oof,
hot.
that's hot
It's a
indeed.
hot tamale.
Weird choice.
What's yours?
What?
Yours.
I like the Ron one. Yeah.
Thanks.
Lavender was pretty good. You know, I think there were, like you said, Hermione. But I think Ron actually had that energy and it showed on screen.
Yeah.
A lot of other people, you know, it's like genuinely the waitress at the beginning, that like sassy playfulness. And that Ron has that a lot of the
Yeah,
time.
agreed.
And in the
Yeah.
books, we don't give him enough credit because he's not always like, but on the screen,
true.
he pops. You know what I
He
mean?
does pop. I know.
With
yeah.
his red hair.
True.
What was your favorite moment in the movie? I mean, I'm gonna be boring and say like the Lily storytelling
know.
moment is definitely my favorite. I can't get over that one. I think it's so perfect.
That was pretty good.
You can just steal that one.
What was my
I know, I
actual
just can't.
favorite? Yeah, it is
The
tough.
cave scene was really interesting too.
Definitely a highlight. Yeah.
It was good.
I
Which
don't
is
know.
the two scenes we talked about most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's funny because when I think of favorite moment, I think of like things I want to watch again.
Yeah.
And the cave scene, maybe at least the beginning when it's intrigue, but like a lot of the movie is like still kind of intense. So I don't know about like watching it like again for the sake of enjoyment. But there were a lot of other things that were fun, like the Slughorn scenes. I thought were all pretty good, like his little party or the scene
Yeah.
at the beginning, and
The Felix Felicis.
that was that
Those
was a
are
great
good.
scene,
Yeah, that was
and
great.
and Tom Felton in that final scene with Dumbledore's death. I feel like that was like it can't be my favorite moment, but it just stands out as being like such a big thing, so
Yeah,
like
agreed.
powerful. So it's like I can't say Dumbledore's death is my favorite moment, but there were just a lot of powerful moments. So yeah, Tom Felton had a certain energy, and Slughorn had a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Hard to pick one though.
Yeah, for sure. It is. There's some good moments in this movie. People say it's terrible, but there's some good moments. And then the final one, who is your favorite character, or who do you think wins the House Cup for this movie?
You know what? I'm gonna give it to Slughorn.
Yeah, that's my vote.
Oh, nice.
It was just good.
He was fantastic in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Hermione played like compared to her
Yeah.
Emma Watson, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I got
Look
me.
at you.
Oh, no, that's the only one. and Daniel Radcliffe too. I just think that she progressed as an actress too, because I was like, oh, she seems to be playing the character better. Like she was jealous of Harry in the classroom, then she was jealous of Ron and Lab,
Yeah.
and she like was able to like display that pretty well. And always in the back, I don't know, she was always in like the background, so she wasn't like a main character, but you could tell that things were affecting her, unlike Ginny's character. Who was
You
in the
forget about
background.
her very quickly.
She's an ultimate
Yeah.
background character.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I agree with the first one, but this would be another.
Mm.
Yeah, I think Hermione did do really well in this movie.
It just, oh man, it's still a little sad because this should be Dumbledore. You know what I mean?
I know.
Like if a different
I know.
person and it would be a Dumbledore hands down. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like
This
at the
is
end of this
Dumbledore's
movie,
to lose.
I know, this
right?
is his
This is
book.
the movie that should be a no-brainer. Like Dumbledore stole the whole movie, you know?
He
But
did.
no.
It was terrible.
It's just ugh.
I'm so glad you guys are on my side for that.
But even-
I
it's
didn't
just-
want to be on your side. 'Cause
Yeah,
I was
I
like, oh,
know.
he can't be that bad. He's
Yeah.
just being
it's
dramatic.
terrible.
Yep.
But then it's like you're watching. I'm like, that's not him.
I know.
And you know what? It also stinks because of the way it ended. In the books, I still was like a little annoyed at Dumbledore by the end, because of Harry's thing in his head that I'm like, I still think it was just in his head. And then I feel like I need to go back and see some of those great moments where Dumbledore, you see the love.
Yeah.
But then to go back and watch this, I'm like, yeah, you're right. He doesn't care about Harry
he
at
doesn't
all.
care
Like
about him,
it
doesn't
doesn't
love him,
feel
yeah.
like it. And I'm like, ugh.
So it's just feeding into the end of the books when you really,
Exactly.
it's like all just in Harry's head.
And
He
so
doesn't love him.
I'm like, no, you know what? If he was being played different, like if I went back and read some of the other parts of the books, I'd be reminded of the love that is so
Yeah.
clear. But movie 6 does not remind you of the love.
Yep.
No, it's all
Not at
because
all.
of not letting Voldemort see his compassion
Yeah.
and love.
I know.
It's dumb. That's not real.
So dumb.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey of Harry Potter and the first time readers. We're done with our first time read and we're just on the movies. So
Yeah, it's pretty great.
I know.
First
Until
half
next
of 7
Coming up next week.
coming up soon.
Ooh.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys later.
Thanks, guys. Bye. That's what you're supposed to say.
Bye. That's what I say. Do I say it all the
I
time?
think so, yeah.
Bye, guys. Pew, pew, pew. You made it. You were getting a little drowsy in there.
Oh no. I don't even get it because I'm like
You should
all-
sleep in today.